Greetings everyone, and welcome to the first of what's likely to be a series of videos and talks on Glossopoeia and Gaming. First, before I get into everything, I just want to thank Matt over at Dice for the format that I'll be using today. If you haven't checked out his Monster Matters videos, you should. They're a great way to get a lot of information quickly, and I appreciate the format, so I hope you enjoy, and if you would like to download a PDF of the presentation I'll be giving today, it is available in the About section. First, what is Glossopoeia? Glossopoeia comes from the Greek glosson, meaning tongue, and poeo, meaning I do. It is the very serious enterprise of language creation, of making words for words' sake. And it is something that is done in varying levels, with varying levels of complexity in creation. And it is important to me because language is responsible for a lot more than we often give credit to. And this quote from Paul Tillich, I think, illustrates that. He says, "Language has created the word loneliness to express the pain of being alone, and it has created the word solitude to express the joy of being alone." And I think that speaks really clearly to the power of language, that it is in the subtleties of it that we really are able to create specific thoughts about our existence in the world. And I think that glossopoets or conlangers or constructed language linguists think about when they create worlds or create fictional, fantastic things. They think about language's connection to that, and again, in varying levels of complexity. First, let's talk about some who uses Glossopoeia. There's the big guy himself, J.R.R. Tolkien. He is the creator of Kenya and the Sindarin family of languages. He actually coined the term Glossopoeia and Mythopoeia, Mythopoeia being the creation of myth. And God, look at that little hobbit. He just loved languages. And his languages continually evolved over the entirety of his life in creating them. And often words in one book will mean something different in another because language evolved for Tolkien. Tolkien is famous not only for his creation of language, but also for his thoughts on language. He said, "I wish life was not so short. Languages take such a time, and so do all the things one wants to know about." He thought that you couldn't really understand a culture or their history unless you learned their language. So when he read, the sagas of the Finns, he read them in Finnish because he wanted to really chew into these cultures, and he felt like he couldn't understand them without getting into the mindset of their language. And he is like the big guy in charge of what we do here a little bit. So I think we need to be paying attention to his love of language and how that relates to what we do. The next person I'm going to point out is David J. Peterson. David J. Peterson is pretty much the only guy making money at this. He's creator of Les Dothraki and Valere for HBO's Game of Thrones. I believe he also is the creator of the Na'vi language for Avatar, but I'm not sure about that. He has a website, dothraki.com, which you can go to actually learn Dothraki. It is a language in its own right. It has a growing lexicon, and actually his grammar has had to change because of the natural speakers of the language and the way they use it, which I think is just delightful and is like a little bit of a linguistic wet dream to have people be speaking the language you've created. He is also the president and founder of the Language Creation Society, which is an international community of constructed linguists. And if you're interested in Glossopoeia and constructing language, there is a community out there for you, which you should look into. Our slogan is Fiat Lingua, which is Latin for "Let there be language," and the symbol for the Language Creation Society is the Tower of Babel, which you can see in this little flag. Also, Nerd has a cat, and he looks just like my cat, so that's cool. And then there's little old me. with my hair curlers and my Hello Kitty glasses and my cup with a bear and in a Santa suit holding a candy cane. I have been um, learning language for a very long time. I've studied three languages formally and taught myself a lot of French, Russian, and Spanish. Language is something that I just am very, very interested in all the time. I've created a lot of uh, small little sets of language, but I've really worked on to flesh out five different languages. Gamayok, Tanuaru, Surmaya Sisie, Udo Tengue, and Krat Tam Tam. Gamayok and Tanuaru are mostly lost. My computer was stolen a few years ago, so those lexicons are mostly lost. I have some of Tanuaru backed up online, but Gamayok is completely lost with a lexicon and linguistic history of about 50,000 words. Um, they are languages that I've just been working on since I was a kid. So I that's like, oh no, that happened, but whatever. It's in the past. Um, a language that I worked on recently for one of my campaigns, Maya Sisie, is the language of the Eastern Elves, and is a highly inflected language that I just love the pants out of because these elves are just so heady and intellectual and talk about everything in terms of like flowery poetic language. Udo Tengue is a language I created for one of my spellcasters. It is uh, inflected Tengu. Um, and Krat Tam Tam is a cat language, and maybe one of these days I'll make some videos that go into these languages in depth so you can get a feel for how I created them and what I'm interested in creating them. Um, the thing that interests me most about language creation is really the realness of language. I love particles like uh-oh and oh no and ow. Like I love stuff like that. I love jargon. I love technical words. I love curse words and slurs because I think they reveal a lot about a culture. For instance, a Tanuaru word that I still remember is kasgaguruk, which I have the definition of here. It literally means a bee stings, from the word for bees, kazin, and gagureu, to sting. And it has the uk diminutive, which means it's something small or cute. And a kasgaguruk is a quick and unexciting sexual encounter. One would say, Alut kasgaguruk na ikan, what a little bee sting there. And it's often used by older men toward younger men to belittle and shame. Now, this reveals a lot about the culture of the Tanuaru, what they think about sex, what they think about size, what they think about insects, what they think about um, the relationship between older men and younger men. And I think that language allows us to say that really quickly. It allows us to, just in the definition of a word, really understand a culture and how they think and how they operate. Um, and that is something that I'm concerned about as a game master. As a game master, I want to create situations that add complexity to my game, and I think language is a place for you to go. A real world example of this comes out of a paper I wrote in college that talks about the power of language. Um, the it comes from this German woman writer Yoko Tabata in one of her stories where she talks about one day I heard a coworker get angry about her pencil. The stupid pencil, it's crazy. It doesn't want to write. In the Japanese language, one cannot possibly personify a pencil in this way. A pencil can neither be stupid nor can it be crazy. In Japan, I had never heard a person cursing their pencil as if it were a person. That was not imaginable for me, to be able to feel such a strong feeling for such a small object. So we have an example here where language restricts reality for someone. Language not only does it create a lot of information about our culture, but it can cut off the way our culture can think about things. So much so that when Tabata is talking about a coworker of hers, she just doesn't get it. How can it was completely unimaginable to her before that moment that such a small thing could be animated in such a way. And so we see that language is responsible for a lot. It creates culture, it creates rationality. A lot of linguists would assert that it creates existence and reality itself, that without language we have no means to understand what's around us. And this can be a tool for you as a game master. specifically when it comes to immersion. As you build your worlds, as you create your characters, as you try to create situations where not all the PCs have all the same information, they're independent characters from each other. When you try to create flavor in terms of the rituals and spells that you cast, or just curse words and put downs and things like that to create more flavor when you're having an orc intimidate a dwarf. Uh, Language is a tool for you as a GM to create a more immersive world for you and your players. So, an example that I think can bring world building, character creation, and separate knowledge and more opportunities to roleplay all together comes out of, I believe it was episode 4 of this season of Game of Thrones, where badass Dany Targaryen stands in front of, I believe his name is Lord Krasnus, and says, Saldrises busdari is gosta or, nige Daenerys del Mazo en Targaryen lentras, en Valeria Webuara Alexan, Valeria Muno Engos Nuis Isa. She says in the beautiful language of the Targaryens in Valyrian that dragons are not slaves, that she is Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, born of the old blood of Valyria. Valyrian is my mother tongue. She says all of this in Valyrian, which is different from Westerosi, which was more of the common tongue in this world. And so, for the world of Game of Thrones and George R.R. Martin's A Song of Ice and Fire, all these separate languages exist in this world. The world is not contiguous over the entire continent. There are different ways of speaking all over the place. And when it comes to character creation, unbeknownst to this evil, slave owner dude, the character of Daenerys Del Masmo, Daenerys Stormborn, speaks Valyrian because she's of Old Valyria. She's born of that blood. And this is also an instance of separate knowledge, where one character knows one thing and another character knows another. And the complexities of language here actually helps create that separate knowledge and to reveal the separate knowledge. One thing I love about David J. Peterson is he gives a talk back about the language that is used in the show on his site, dothraki.com. And the word Buzdari is actually not High Valyrian, the language that Daenerys is speaking. Buzdari comes from the Astapori word for slave. So when she says dragons are not slaves, she is calling that slave owner out. She is saying, not only have I understood you this whole time, but I've understood you so well, I'm using a word in your own tongue. And that level of immersion, I think, is something that you can work toward in your GMing, and also when you're playing as a player character. As you immerse yourself in the world of as you immerse yourself and your players in the world that you're creating together at the table, language is a tool. Another tool that I want you to consider when you are building your world, creating your characters, and creating separate knowledge. Imagine a situation where, let's say, one character is trying to mount an army to go take back her kingdom or something. And her best friend is a half-orc, and she calls her half-orc best friend her general in Orcish. And maybe that word is Anagak. And everyone knows this character's name is one thing, but this other character is calling this other character Anagak the whole time. And they're the only two that speak Orcish. And it comes out way down the line that Anagak this whole time has meant general. And this whole time, this princess character has been always plotting to have her Anagak at her side as she takes back her kingdom. And that is just a really simple, easy way to create so much flavor and so much depth and so much complexity to your story without a lot of work. Now, I am interested in showing you ways that you can actually put the work into creating complexity for your story. And we're going to actually do that in a very specific example that we'll end the video with spellcasting. Now, spellcasting comes out of an actual tradition of spell work in our culture. We as a culture, before the scientific revolution, believed in magic and believed in its existence. We wrote things called grimoires and grimoires and talked about glamour, and these all come from the same word, Greek word meaning letter, and there was an inherent magic in words and letters. And words were thought to create things. Knowing the true name of something. I mean, are there any theologians in the room? You can't write God's name down in Judaism. You have to write the tetragrammaton down, just the consonants, because if you were to write the vowels, it would unspell the world. Everything would blow up or something. I don't know. The point is that for a long time, and I think even now we need to admit it, that words are really powerful, and you can use the power of words in your spellcasting and your role play. Now, if we think about grammar, grammar is a set of rules. Well, spellcasting in Pathfinder and D&D 2.5, and it's pretty much any gaming system you're going to use, is going to involve rules and components and elements. The same way that grammar uses parts of speech to create sentences, spells use traditional spells use components, targets, ranges, durations, saves, and words of power. Another option for Pathfinder uses effect words, meta words, and target words. So there are rules, elements that mirror grammar, and we can put them side by side. Sentences are formed of subjects, objects, verbs, modifiers, prepositions, prepositional phrases, things like that. And spells are formed of other components as well. They're things that are put together to create magic. And you can kind of begin to draw lines. Targets maybe can be thought of subjects or objects in sentences. Components are objects that are used to create a spell. Ranges have to do with where things are happening and describing where things are happening, so that will relate to modifiers and prepositions. How long things are happening, that's a modifier. Saves as well could be linked to modifiers. And all of the magic is happening in the verb. All of these are connecting together for me. I see the components and parts of spell work in Pathfinder and the grammar that we use to create sentences bridging up and creating a lot of connections really nicely. So if we look at sentences on one side and spells on the other, we can kind of use the Pathfinder rules to help us to create a quick language when we're casting spells. And this is what I mean by that. If we look at components, we need nouns. The components of spells are like a piece of wool or a vial of ash or something, and they're all listed in the Pathfinder rules. So we just need a bunch of nouns, which we can create. We can make up a bunch of words, can't we? And targets, there are a host of different targets, but we can really narrow this down to I'm targeting myself, I'm targeting one or more creatures, or I'm targeting one or more objects. And one or more creatures or one or more objects would work the same way for area of effects and things like that. There are only a certain number of ranges: personal, touch, close, medium, long, and unlimited. And although there are a lot of ways to describe duration, for me, you can narrow it down to maybe what's happening right now, what's happening forever, or what's happening for a time. And again, verbs, the verb of the sentence and the verb of the spell, that's where the real magic is happening. When you describe the action of something, that is when um, you're making magic happen. And we're going to use all of these parts that are listed in the rules for Pathfinder to create a really simple ad hoc language rather quickly. Now, I thought I would do this on the fly, and maybe I'll do this on the fly one day, but trying to put this together, I couldn't really do it on the fly. But I did do it really quickly. This took me only about 20 minutes. So I took all of the components for spell work, and I assigned some different things, some different rules for an ad hoc language I'm creating rather shortly, just for spellcasting. All of my nouns are going to end in an A or an O. For targets, they're going to be shown on the verb, and I'm going to have the ending IS if the target is me, OS or OSI if it's one or more creatures, US or USI if it's one or more objects. And when it comes to range, I'm going to use the preposition of, and I'm going to use these different suffixes with the preposition to show what the range is. I have 3 different words for durations, and I need to create some words for numbers to describe how long something's lasting. And I'm going to say all verbs are going to end with po. Now, this is just me using the rules of Pathfinder to create some really simple grammar rules so that I can start to create a language rather quickly. Let's look at the first spell in the spell list in the spell index, Acid Arrow. The components are a rhubarb leaf, adder, stomach, and a dart. If the target is one creature, the range is long, the duration is 1 round. And the verb is to it creates an effect, one acid arrow. Now, I'm going to just create some words. Let's say that the word for rhubarb leaf is rima, that the word for stomach is doso, that the word for snake is anula, that the word for dart is atamo. It's one creature, so the ending of the verb will be os. Its range is long, so we'll use preposition of and the ending tom. The round is less for one round at level 1, so we'll use the word eshe, and I just made a word for one, ista, and we'll have a verb that means create, jasisico, and it creates one arrow and atamo of acid, which we're going to call aogon. Stringing everything together, I have a neat little spell rather quickly. Daurimake doso anuaske atamoke jesesiko os atam esheista atamo aogons ayim. With rhubarb and stomach of snake and dart, create far from me for one time a dart of acid. I do. Now, let's do it again with fireball. Fireball. The components out of the rules are a ball of guano from a bat and sulfur. The targets are 1 point within a range, and that is narrowing down all of the rules for fireball, but bear with me here. The range is long, the duration is instantaneous, and it creates one object, one fireball. I match it up with the rules of my language and create some nouns. We're going to call the word shit kalato, and the word for bad is vama, so it would be Kalato Vamas. The word for sulfur is going to be JOHANNA. It's 1 point within a range, so it's not a creature, it's an object, so we'll use the ending us. The range is the same as the last spell, and the duration is instantaneous. We're going to create a verb paetko to mean evoke, the noun welo to mean ball, and the noun ayada to mean fire. And together with the rules that we created based off of the Pathfinder rules, we get the spell sentence Dau Kalato Vamas dehonake pata eko us autam esis welo ayada sayim. With batshit and sulfur, I evoke far from me now a ball of fire. This, to me, is the simplest way to bring a lot of flavor with your spellcasting into play really quickly, without having to be an expert on grammar or how language works. I literally, and we'll review it really quickly, I took the rules of the spells and made some grammar rules. All the nouns I'm going to make are going to end with an A or an O. That's just going to help me create sounds really quickly. It's in the, when you give yourself constraints or rules, that creativity really soars sometimes. I have some really simple rules that all create a quick grammar, but the grammar is not really the important part. The important part is being able to say, Daurimake dosa anuaske atamo ke jesisiko os atam eshe ista atamo aogon zayin. When a character walks into a room and says that, that's a lot more scarier than a character walking into a room and saying acid arrow. Now, I'm not saying that you can't just walk into a room and say acid arrow. And I'm not saying that there's not a lot of fun to be had as a spellcaster without creating elaborate vocal components for your spells. But if it's something you're interested in, and it's something one of your players are interested in, here's some tools you can give them, and this is something that you can reward them for as a GM. This is also a tool you can use as a GM to cast spells at your players and have them have no idea what's going on. Make them earn their spellcraft checks. Make them earn their linguistic checks as you throw languages at them. It's an oft-forgotten tool of yours as a GM to be able to add flavor in this way. And you know what? If you are not wanting to create words, wanting to add flavor, use the rules in this way. Here you have the components, a target and a range. I'm going to make sure that I mention, the different components in my spell. I'm not just going to say acid arrow, I'm going to say leaf of rhubarb, stomach of snake, with this dart one foe I shake, far from me let acid fly, pierce the skin and burn the eye. There is a lot to be said about adding flavor, using the rules of Pathfinder to create something more visual, more immersive, and more exciting for the people at the table, not only as a GM, but also as a player. Um, so that's where we're going to wrap up this video. The language creation part was quick and dirty because if at any moment it could become really complex. Language discussions can become entirely complex really quickly. If you would like more examples or to learn more about how to use the spell components rules of Pathfinder to create languages, I totally want to talk with you about that and give you pointers and tips. Um, I hope this gets a discussion starting around language creation for world building. There are a lot of awesome videos on world building that you should check out, and a lot of GMs that are concerned with this topic. Um, I think the important thing to remember is that words are existence. And if you're trying to create existence, even in the imaginations of yourself and your players, if you're a GM, words are an awesome place to start. They're the place that J.R.R. Tolkien started. They're the place that a lot of us often start. And it is a tool that you can use to um, create that immersive world you're going after with a lot of ease, but a lot of flavor. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please post your comments and questions, and let's see where this series goes, yeah? Um, you can go to my Facebook, which will have a little YouTube annotation here for you to pop over with that, or you can send me an email, and there's a little annotation there. Um, have a great day, guys, and happy gaming.